Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular scheduled Select Board meeting, Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023. The time is 7:01, and we will call this meeting to order. If we could all stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, we have quite a number of things on our agenda tonight, and the item that we're going to start with first is a license for Duck Donuts. So, Rakesh, you'd like to come forward and tell us about this new business?
Hi, good evening. My name is Rakesh Parsuri Gopal, and I'm here for the license for Duck Donuts. And I have a background in software engineering, and I'm a dad of 2 kids, so they love donuts, and I've been to different places in Massachusetts to try different donuts. But I'm not like, I didn't get the wow moment. So I thought like there should be some other way. So that's why I thought of bringing this brand to Massachusetts. So Duck Donuts is basically a warm, delicious, made-to-order donut, which is vanilla cake-based donut. So the customer comes in and places the order, then we make the donut. And it's customizable. There are different coatings, drizzles. They can customize however they want. And with that, we also provide coffee, espresso drinks, and milkshakes and ice creams as well. So that's the brief about it. Any questions?
And I think you said you were hoping to be open by the end of September?
Yeah, I'm hoping to open by end of September. That's the plan. Still waiting.
All right. Any questions or comments? All right, Ben, do we have a motion?
Thank you.
I'd make a motion, excuse me, I'd make a motion to approve request of Duck Donuts for a common victualler license to operate at 102B Providence Highway, subject to the applicant receiving all final inspections from the building and health departments.
I'll second that.
And all those in favor, please say aye.
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 We have a vote, 5-0. Congratulations, and we
Thank
look
you.
forward to visiting your business.
Thank you.
Good luck. Good luck.
All right, next on.
You don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting, so we're going to go for a long time, so.
Next, we have a vote, an appointment for the Walpole Cultural Council. Sweta, would you mind coming up and just briefly telling us why you would like to seek an appointment to the Cultural Council?
Sure. Before I'll introduce myself, hi everyone, I'm Shweta Singh, and I'm a Walpole resident since 2019. I live in Endane Drive with my husband and 2 boys. I will give a little bit of a professional introduction, and then I will answer your question of why I want to join the Cultural Council. Education and professional, I am a master's in computer science, and I am a senior IT manager with a medical device company from last 15 years. With that, I also have a passion about culture, and I have been engaged in multiple cultural events. I organized the weekly Bollywood dance with the Walpole Public Library this year, and I have also worked with the elementary school kids who performed their dance in Rhode Island State House in front of the governor, and they have also performed in Norwood Day in 2022. And I have also worked with the women to organize the group dance for the Diwali cultural event for the year 2022, which was held in Norwood High School. So I have a passion for culture, and I think Cultural Council gives a perfect platform for me to engage, bring to the table my project management experience, right? I have a great experience in handling the small as well as the large project, and also organizing the events, small as well as the large scale. So that's why I want to be part of the council, and also learn from the fellow council to go forward. So I think my passion and dedication can be really helpful and can also help me learn and grow with my culture passion.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any members of the board have any questions or comments? All right. Ben, do we have a motion?
I'd make a motion to appoint Shweta Singh to the Walpole Cultural Council.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have a vote, 500.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
volunteering, and thank you for being part of the Cultural Council.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks.
Chad is on.
Oh, great. So next item on this evening is Chad Clark is joining us via Zoom to discuss the FY 2022 management letter. Do we have a connection?
Chad, are you there?
Yep. Hi, everyone.
Great. Jim,
Can
do
you hear me?
want to do an introduction or
No,
just
just
pass it
this
over to
is
Chad?
something that comes up each year. Roselli and Clark have been with the town for a very long time. They know the ins and outs of Walpole. They're very familiar with the way we do business around here. And they know what to look for. They're very well respected in Massachusetts. So with that, I'll hand off to you, Chad, and thank you for your work on this.
Thank you, Jim. So I'm going to talk today about the audit results from June 30th of 2022, and just go through it quickly. It was actually a good year overall for Walpole, and it was overall a good year for a lot of communities. I think the bounce back from COVID happened fairly well. A lot of municipalities in Massachusetts were well suited to endure the 3 years or so of COVID turn down. There'd been a lot of stabilization. Free cash has just been increasing annually in many communities, as you've seen in Walpole. So, I think it's kind of a reflection of how Walpole's always been run. There has been this conservative attitude towards the budgeting of revenue, and at the same time there is also a conservative attitude towards each department getting a budget, but the expectation is that the appropriations won't be wasted. It won't be spent for the sake of being spent, which sometimes results in both of those result in being a part of why you have the free cash that you annually use a piece of, and yet you come back the next year with just as much or more. Obviously, some of what's happened in the past year is the ARPA money from the Fed has allowed for certain expenses that maybe the general fund would have covered, that the town is able to kind of push off onto that grant. I know there's also projects involved that are above and beyond what would normally be paid for out of the general fund, which I think is honestly what was ultimately the goal of the Fed providing the ARPA funds, was a function of stabilization of operations and also encouraging economic development through construction or new ideas within the community. So that's all kind of building along. One of the things that I want to point out to everyone about ARPA, there's a couple of important dates that are kind of, believe it or not, looming more quickly than we realize. ARPA funds must all be obligated by December 31st, 2024. So we're talking about 16 months or so. And what obligated means under the federal rules is you must have a contract in place by no later than that date. It can't be we've picked the project and we're going to go put it out to bid after that date. All contracts have to be put into place by that date. The other thing about obligated is that payroll can only be obligated as earned. So what that means is that any ARPA funds that are being used to fund payroll, that has to stop as of December 31st of 2024. There can be no payroll paid after that date out of ARPA. Relative to the final spending of ARPA, you have 2 years from the obligation date. so December 31st to 2026, to pay out all cash payments to vendors that you've hired to perform and do work under ARPA. There will be no payments allowed after December 31st, 2026. So when ARPA first came out, it was like, wow, we got 5 years to spend this, and now we're kind of quickly, seems, running the gamut of time to the deadline. So just wanted to point that out to you, because that's a couple of big things that I know everyone talks about and everyone wants to, figure out what to do with it, but we were getting to that point. I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to give you a really cursory overview of the financial statements. A couple of notes. If you look at the management discussion analysis, the MD&A, which would be the first section of the financial statements, there's a couple of bullet points on the first page. I'm going to just highlight those. The town's net position, which for general accountants or whatever, think of it in the terms of equity or fund balance. For all government operations, increased by 10.4 million. The unrestricted net position, however, shows a deficit in the governmental funds of 42 million. This is a result of the liabilities for net pension and net OPEB obligations for retiree benefits, which at 6/30/22 totaled 84 million. So you'd actually have about a $42 million surplus, not a $42 million deficit in there, if there was no such thing as pension or OPEB. So just want to kind of spell that out in case anyone's looking at that saying, wow, that's some big deficits. What we do? You didn't do anything. There's just a long-term commitment to provide benefits to current and future retirees. On the governmental funds balance sheet, the total fund balance increased $58 million to a total of $96 million. That seems like an awful lot, but one of the things important to point out is that the town went out and took a large bond for the middle school construction, all up front. A lot of times construction bonds are done long term once the project's over. I'll talk about in a second why what you did was the smart move. But I just want to point out that of the 58 million, 47 million of it was from the proceeds of the long-term debt, which is going to be used to build the school, and then there was another 3.5 million of premiums that you received. So that's a lot of the increase, and that's a lot of the balance. So no one should be surprised if in a year or two, once the school's kind of done being constructed, that 96 million is going to go back down to probably where it was at the end of 21. Now, why was this smart to take all this debt up front? Well, you were able to go out and get your debt in February of 2022. If anyone has been paying attention to the federal banking and treasury boards, they've been increasing interest rates. And you were able to get your interest rates at between 3 to 5% because it's a variable. That was the same interest rates that you guys were able to issue debt for 3 or 4 years before that, which is pretty low. I'm guessing you saved significant amounts of money by taking this debt all up front long term. So I just like to applaud the town for opting to move in that direction and take that option. On the other report that we issue for the federal grants, the traditionally called single audit report, I would just point out that the two major programs we had to do for this year was the school lunch program and the COVID-19 educational stabilization program, which is also commonly referred to as ESSER. Those were both the major programs we had to look at for compliance, and both of them reported no findings relative to compliance issues. So They're well run, and that's to be applauded. Both of those are run out of the school department. This coming year, the big one will obviously be, we'll start looking at ARPA money, and as we dive into that. And speaking of diving into it, we did start the FY23 audit, some preliminary work back in early mid-July, and my understanding is that the town has already closed their books for FY23, has already submitted the balance sheet and supporting schedules to the Department of Revenue, and gotten its free cash certified, which is very impressive for my group of clients that I do. I think Walpole was the first one to have all of that done. And we are scheduled to come in at the end of September to finish the on-site financial statement audit field work for FY23 and hopefully get the single audit work done. I'm going to jump over now to the management letter and just go through a couple of quick things on that. The management letter, for some of you who've been around for a while, will look and feel a lot lighter, and there is a reason for that. So many of the things that the town had been tackling and working towards fixing, take like the computer system one. I'll pick on that one. That one was in there for a while, but it was a very long-term effort, plan, funding. And I'm happy to say that the town has really knocked out a lot of those things. From our perspective, there is not presently any real major areas where the town needs to make an immediate improvement in its financial operations, which should be, congratulated for the financial management team for having taken you to that point. So much of what you'll see in the management letter is informational or just updating, and in some cases, suggestions of how to maybe make things a little more efficient. Not that it's necessarily wrong. One of the first things that we had in informational items was investment income. And we kind of pointed this out because the market was changing, interest rates were going up. The big one was T-bills. And historically, a lot of communities had maybe invested a little money in T-bills in their trust funds, but they never really thought about investing general fund money that way. Normally, general fund money has to be invested in very safe things like savings accounts, CDs, T-bills. You're not really allowed to play in the stock market with general fund money, which is obviously a conservative and fiduciarily responsible way of approaching it. But with the T-bill interest rates now going up to almost 5%, there was this encouragement for communities to open that door, and Walpole did. So we fully expect that in FY23 and FY24, because some of them are longer term, multiple months investments, so some of the earnings will be reflected probably into 24. You should see a nice bump up in the investments on the general fund side, and that'll help regenerate some free cash at honestly not the direct expense of the local taxpayers, because it's bank interest income effectively, just funded by the Fed. The next section I'd comment on real quick is the OPEB. Your trust fund now has 6.8 million of assets in it. This is again as of about a year ago. So any contributions made in 23 and any interest made would not be factored into this. It was kind of a weird and odd year for OPEBs the last 2 years because most of them made a lot of money in FY21. And then for people who are familiar, the stock market kind of took a hit there in the fourth quarter of FY22. And most of the gains from FY21 got lost. The good news is that for most of my clients, the loss was actually slightly less or about the same as the gain. So if you take a 24-month period, even though it felt extremely volatile, you really didn't take a large hit to your principal. And obviously, nobody wants to lose the principal when possible. The other long-term liability was the retirement system, and as of December 31st of 2021, in this case, they were nearly 80% funded. Now, the hit from what was the second quarter of 2022 isn't going to be reflected until this year's audit and this year's numbers, because they report on a calendar year of December of 2022 coming up. So we'll see how that ultimately impacted the funding, but the 80% funded is above average for the state. So your county system, everybody wants it to be fully funded as soon as possible, but it's definitely performing at average or above, at least as of a year ago when we did the audit. The next section on the management letter I just wanted to point out is we'd made a note. We looked for technological advances, things to make things more efficient. And coming out of COVID, there was, a lot of like the signing off on the vendor and payroll warrants had become a reduced amount of effort because people weren't meeting. Everything was Zoom. How do we sign these? And the state had allowed certain reprieves which no longer exist. But coming out of the Modernization Act in 2016 was an option that took the traditional rule of a majority of the selectmen having to sign the warrant to the fact that it would allow the selectmen to appoint one of its board members to sign the warrants on their behalf, with that person then reporting back. And then the other option that I've seen is I know some communities have moved to like a DocuSign model where selectmen can review the warrants from home, electronically sign securely from home, and not have to, get everybody in the same room at the same time, so to speak, to cover it. I know it was presented, I know it was discussed. At this time, my understanding is you guys wanted to keep it the same way. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. As I said, at this point, some of our suggestions now are to encourage modernization and encourage efficiency where possible. Let people know it's an option. A lot of people probably wouldn't have known it otherwise. And then finally, on the management letter, I appreciate the fact that you've changed your policy now. It was suggested the capitalization policy for fixed assets was $5,000, had been for 20 years. That was the low threshold. So anything over 5,000 had to be capitalized and recorded as a fixed asset. Obviously, with inflation, obviously with costs over 20 years, $5,000 is, sadly not buying what it used to. And in some cases, the items just aren't really rising to what people would think of, oh, this is a capital investment of the town. So we encourage the town to move it, the threshold, to $10,000. You have accepted it, so moving forward in the audit, capitalization will happen of any new assets at $10,000 and above. Anything previously recorded at $5,000 will be left on the books and just grandfathered in. Probably a lot of that stuff is getting close to fully depreciated anyway. So that was it of the highlights that I had. As always, I want to open it up to any questions you all may have.
Thank you, Chad, for that review, and quite frankly, congratulations to our finance department and props to all the work that you've done. To open it up to the board for any questions.
I'd just like to comment and add on to what you just said. Ally. Jim, I think you and the finance team have done just an extraordinary job, and I know we've got Jody and Lisa out there with the department heads, and the way you guys are running the town at this point is really superb. And it's certainly, picked up in the tone of this management letter coming back to us, and no findings, no compliance issues. Some of the recommendations from prior years have been implemented. Where we are with OPEB, where we are with the pension, overall financial management process really, really strong. The debt borrowing that was mentioned, we did save a lot of money by borrowing early. I thought that number was around 7 million, Jim. Is that what we had?
It was a conservative estimate, yeah.
Yeah, so it's millions for sure. And so I think that was an important thing for us to do. And again, Jim, that was you and the finance team driving that process. You guys have really done a fine job, and I just think it's important for us to say that as we review this type of a management letter and review.
Thank you.
You bet. Lisa, Jody, great job, and to the department heads who are here, wonderful job.
Any other comments from the board? Jim, you said it very well.
Thanks.
All right, I think, thank you, Chad, for reviewing this. Jim, did
No
you have any
action
more comments? All
necessary,
right. And I guess we'll speak again next year.
Excellent. No, thank you for having me. Nice to see you all again.
On OPEB, it seems we're always chasing it, and there's an accounting change, and now we have
Mark.
another 10 million extra this year.
Hold on, Mark. I'm gonna allow you to speak, but if you could come up to the microphone and just introduce yourself. Yeah, just to introduce yourself as formality.
Mark Sullivan, I'm a member of FinCom. I'm just curious about OPEB. So there's accounting changes that are put in place, and we basically have an additional 10 million liability. That's how I interpreted the report that you gave us. So I'm just wondering, are there any more accounting changes that they're considering that's going to continue to increase the gap? And my other question is, when you look at OPEB and the liability that Walpole has and how we report against it, does every town have to report OPEB the same way? In other words, we all have to acknowledge these accounting rules so that our percentages are the same, or could Walpole be doing it differently than another town, and so their percentages would be somewhat different?
Okay, yeah, I can address a lot of that. So yes, so in the management letter, I had a note in there that the discount rate, which is, think of it as kind of the interest rate against the money that's being earned and the liability, it actually, there was a reduction of 0.59% in that. So as that interest rate, or discount rate, I should say, goes less, it means that you have to fund more of it, and the liability goes up. That discount rate has been moving all over the place since the pandemic. Part of it was that with the change a couple of years to a new GASB for OPEB, the actuaries were trying to find where it should settle out at. There was at times kind of a wide range. As time has gone on, that's kind of stabilized out across the country as to where should these discount rates really be. And obviously part of it is there's been a lot of fluctuation because of the expectation of the rate of return and the cost, the future costs. So it has been moving around. It's not, I would say that it's set up by a GASB, and so therefore it seems like an accounting rule, but most of this stuff that's affecting your OPEB liability is really an actuarial determination. It's not the accountants per se determining the discount rate, it's the actuaries.
Okay.
You also had OPEB or GASB required a change in calculating claims increases in the future. It was under ASOP 6 for actuaries. And that was one that added about 6.2 million to your liability, even more so than the discount rate. Something like that should not move around too much, in theory. But I did see a lot of actuaries tweaking it, adjusting it over the last couple of years. So in answer to your question, I would say that it's always subject to a lot of volatility, but I think there's this trend analysis that's kind of come into play over the last 6-7 years with OPEB that started to stabilize how actuaries are handling it, how the liabilities are being calculated. As far as like apples to apples, that discount rate can fluctuate. One of the big things is how much money are you putting in and how much money do you have saved up. A community like you all had about 6.8 million. If you took a community that had 20 million, their discount rate's going to be much higher and their liability is going to come down. It's, you know, kind of a concept of, say, if you're familiar with accounting, like time value of money. The more you have saved up now, the less of a burden it is in the future, and you get credit for that.
Right.
So-
I don't want to tie up the meeting with the analysis. So I appreciate, so it's more of the numbers versus accounting rules and regulations changing that's in.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's trend analysis by the actuaries.
Okay, fine.
Is-
Thank you.
is
Thank
probably
you
the
very
best
much.
answer
Again,
I
I don't
can-
want to tie up the meeting. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad.
Next on the agenda, we have a pool feasibility presentation from Vertex Companies. We have Gary Du Bois is here this evening. Gary, come on up and join us.
How are you guys?
Good, how are you this evening?
Very good, very good. Right. So thank you guys for having us here today. My name is Gary Du Bois. I'm a civil engineer with Vertex. With me is Tom Scarlata. He's our aquatics expert from BH+A. Earlier this year, the town had asked us to put together a feasibility study and a conceptual design for improvements to look into improvements at the two public pool facilities. We went through that. We've recently completed that, maybe a month and a half ago. And what we're here to do tonight is to present our findings and our design alternatives, and discuss them with the group. We've put together a brief summary presentation. Feel free, chime in at any point with any comments or questions, but there'll also be time at the end to go over any of that. And again, we tried to keep it as brief as possible. We understand there's quite a few things on the agenda, so. Little technical difficulties. I'll start running through and the slides will catch up. So what we'll go through is a quick review of the existing conditions as both the center pool and the south pool. The next thing we'll go through at that point is just some of our design process and how we work through it. And then the last part will be the 3 conceptual design options that we put together. The center pool, as I'm sure you're all aware, 6-lane pool, roughly 100 by 40 feet in dimensions. Also has the circular wading pool with the splash pad. And the restroom facilities building. Based on our conversation with folks in town, during the summer months, which is generally late June to mid-August, that facility is basically nonstop from 7 a.m. through 5 p.m. And then on the days where there are swim meets, it's 5 to 7, and it's just going. Similarly with the south pool, similar dimensions for the pool, no splash pad, no wading pool, but very, very highly in demand, going from 7 a.m. No, that's not it. It's south pool is from 10 a.m. I believe until about 7 p.m. between swim lessons, public open swim, and that type of programming. The programming is, aside from the splash pad, pretty common at both pools, but it seems like the center pool gets higher usage. Next one. Prior to our team coming on board, Weston and Sampson had done a facility condition assessment of the two pool facilities. Many of the deficiencies they found were similar between the two facilities. Generally, it was that there were roof leaks at both buildings causing water damage. There were multiple code issues, whether it be building code, electrical code, or communications code. The pool shells themselves had significant cracking in them, and really have a substandard level of stability, really. They're starting to get to that point where they're reaching the end of their life cycle. And then on the site side, ADA accessibility compliance was an issue at both facilities. As we moved on to, after we had reviewed the existing conditions and spoken with some of the folks in town, we had a stakeholder planning session with the intention of pulling in all those different stakeholders, all those parties that would be the users and the people that we really need to get that input from. It included, I'm not sure of every one of the town departments that were there, but I think all of them were invited. We had recreation committee members. We had, I think both the aquatics director and the assistant aquatics director were there as well. We went through, similar to this type of meeting, we went through the existing conditions that we had found. We went through current programming trends going on more regionally and nationally, with new aquatics facilities that are being developed. Reviewed different options, whether they be slides, shade structures, deck amenities, pool geometries, things along those lines with the group. And had really a productive conversation with that entire group. We left that meeting with a few key points to take from it. Our project was going to focus its efforts on the center pool, with the south pool having no improvements as part of this project. And I believe, but I don't want to speak for Patrick or Jim, that the town has plans to do some improvements to the south pool facility separate from this project. And really where we took it from there was to develop 3 conceptual design options. One with a single pool, one with 2 separate pools at the existing center pool site, one with a single larger pool, which would still accomplish some of those same goals, but have different pros and cons to them, which Tom will speak to shortly. And the third option that we investigated, and this was really just for an order of magnitude cost comparison, was to do the single pool option, but to put some type of bubble enclosure over it to extend the season for the facility. So though, that's really what came out of that stakeholder planning session. I will now turn it over to Tom, and I'll be back on the site end later.
Okay, thank you. Again, my name is Tom Scarlato. I'm an architect by training. I'm an architect practice, but I've been doing swimming pools since 1988. I've done them all over the Northeast, New England, Texas, Middle Atlantic states, so I'm familiar with the construction. Again, as Gary said, 2 pools have changed since then. Back when I was first hired to do pools, I'm doing swimming pools. Now I'm doing community aquatic facilities. It's just the whole concept of the way pools are looked at are no longer this rectangular box that kids jump in, and again, typically have 3/6 of water or 3 feet of water in your case here, which again, for smaller kids, that becomes a kind of a sink or swim proposition, because you either helped out or not. You've taken a big step already by having the separate wading pool, which is a big amenity that we've added to a lot of facilities, which allows you to run a separate function at a facility while you have your pool, particularly when you have a swim lessons or you have a meet going on. You still have something for kids to do at that pool, which is a big step forward. Again, what we did, we'll show as we went through a number of options, talking about pools which are really multi-generational. Pools are no longer drop the kids off in the morning, pick them up in the afternoon. It's parents, it's grandparents. It becomes a destination for a family to go to, or that's sort of the intent, to provide amenities to keep them going. Fitness, exercise of all ages is becoming important. Again, up in this area, without a heated pool, sometimes water temperatures can create issues for some exercise. But again, it's still done all over the place in terms of pools in Needham, elsewhere still do that. It just depends on the time of day. Usually try to do them in the afternoon so the water has some time to warm up. Looking at other events that can happen, the ability to do your own lifeguard training, if that's possible at the pool, is a great deal. And the big elements that we're seeing and that were talked about are, let's say, a zero depth entry, meaning a beach entry where I can walk from the pool deck basically right into the water, so that there's no steps, there are steps, but there's no severe drop off. Kids can gradually walk into the pool. A senior or myself can walk into the pool without having to climb down a ladder or jumping in. Various features that can be built in. And again, the whole deck space experience is looked at differently. So what we did, we've looked at, as Gary mentioned, we've had 3 options. Again, right now you have a swimming pool that is basically a little over, almost 6 lanes. It's kind of an odd dimension. The pool, based on what I can see from it, appeared to be an old fill and spill pool where you put water on one end, drain it out the other end without a filtration system. And that's been, I mean, it's amazing the condition that it's still in. But right now what we're looking at is, for option 1, would be a regulation 6-lane lap pool that can meet all your requirements for your swim team, but also have depths and functions that can function as a recreational pool outside of the swim team. We've also proposed a second pool, which has a beach entrance, a large recreational area, and a shallow area with steps to separate the functions and also expand the use. This gives smaller kids the ability to still have the zero depth functions without affecting or being in a separate body of water as a lap pool. You could be having swimming lessons or a meet going on, you still have another pool to use. More importantly, with 2 pools, if one pool goes down for whatever reason, again, it's human contamination of different sorts, you don't lose the other pool. You still have a pool and operating. And that's actually been a big consideration in a lot of pools that I've done where we've had one big pool, there's always been downtime. Belmont, Needham, and Newton all have had this conversation. They've all gone with 2 pools. Just the fact that they can keep 2 pools in operation, it gives them more flexibility in terms of the operation. One of the options was to look at a single pool. And again, this is a pool that's actually a little bit larger in square footage, but it gives me a 6-lane recreational or a competitive swimming area for competitive swimming. Plus, we just attach the zero depth area along one side. The zero depth area starts, goes down quickly to 2.5 feet, gives you recreational. Swimming lessons are very important, so we have to make sure we can accommodate that. But this puts it all into one body of water. And again, the difference is too, when you have 2 pools, or even this pool, depending on the population or who your demographics are, we look at filtration-wise, we turn the water over at different rates. So on the smaller pools, we're turning them over in 2 hours to keep the water cleaner. Pools like this, the minimum would be 6, we'd probably go to 4. Just again, the event, you have more people in the pool, different user groups, we would just change this out. Again, the advantage here is you have one filter system versus having 2 separate systems. You can't run 2 pools off of one system. So again, you have a single filter system here, running a little bit higher, and it's also one body of water to monitor. When you have the 2 pools, you really have to look at lifeguards, and may have one or more guards, because you have a guard and they have their back to them. If I'm looking at the one pool, I can't be guarding the other pool. This way too, I can station guards around this one, kind of have a bigger coverage. So that's an operational issue to look at. Next. And then very simply, as Gary said, we were asked to look at an option if we were to put a temporary structure over this pool. Again, there's different ways of doing this. We're going to look at, this would be an air-supported structure. And again, it would fit over the perimeter of this pool. But you have to look at it when you do not only the cost of doing the bubble, again, another little structure to support the air equipment that needed to support this, I now become an indoor building. So, think about it, if I'm gonna use this pool and I'm gonna arrive in December, January, I gotta come into a heated building, I have to come, so it's no longer your unheated bathhouse that you walk into with your bathing suit on in June. I have to come to a building. And again, a lot of the buildings that do this around here, facilities that do that, already had a pre-existing bathhouse that was part of an indoor pool. The Wayland pool, which was a photograph of this, that was an indoor pool, that when they did the conversion of it, they had all the infrastructure in for the lobby and for the mechanical systems. They just expanded it and made it into a bubble. There's another pool up on the Blue Hills Ave, that's the Boys and Girls Club, which again, that building is a glass structure. And that building has locker rooms, heated locker rooms for the club. It just happens that the pool, which can be run in the winter, has those amenities to it. So again, that's the thing that people really need to understand is that our pools, when I do a normal outdoor pool, you do a temporary seasonal structure, it's not heated, it's not sprinklered, but as soon as I start bringing people in year-round, it has to convert that, and that's why there's a significant cost associated with that. Next.
So we only provided one slide here for site development. It's extremely similar between the 3 different pool options. The main issue we would have right now is that existing site has shared use with the playground as well as the ball field. So looking at the number of parking spaces that are there right now, we don't believe that would be sufficient. What we've laid out here is to the northwest of the pool that you'll see there, is what we would do, some type of seasonal parking area that would have a pervious surface to help with stormwater runoff. It would not be open in the winter. We would look at either something like a checker block type surface, which you can see up on the top right images there, or some type of crushed stone with a geogrid beneath that. We'd also have an overflow parking lot further to the east of the pool. It's offset by a bit because there is a small stream in between. That would be a traditional paved parking lot. And we'd have stormwater management systems there in place. Along those lines, there is a pond and a corresponding wetland adjacent to the existing pool. So all of that work a portion of that work would be within the wetland buffer, and we'd be permitting that with the Conservation Commission, with the hope of minimizing any disturbance that is in that jurisdictional area. And the main thing to touch on there would be just improvements to traffic circulation throughout the existing lot, some minor restriping to improve ADA accessibility, and also some landscape buffers there to screen the facility a bit from the roadway. Yeah, you want me to slide back?
Yeah, you can touch that, yeah. I think the one thing, Gary included the costs on the underside. I believe it's in your package as well. Again, what the construction cost of the pool would be, you have the design and permitting requirements for the pool, then an overall project cost, because again, when you do a project like this, there's other things that become involved, whether the FF&E and technology, so you have to make sure you have a full number. When you start looking at these costs, you're looking at, this is just a swimming pool, why does it cost so much? And part of the reason is that these are fairly complex structures. They're serving a very diverse population and a lot of programming uses. We have a lot of requirements that we have to meet both from the design standpoint as well as construction standpoint. The cost of the equipment is far more expensive than residential equipment in terms of the size. And again, you're looking for materials that are going to last. You don't want to put in equipment that is going to have a continued maintenance on that. It's also, too, these are publicly built pools, so it's under the public construction laws. Depending on how much of the project involves buildings, it goes out as a Chapter 149 project. If it's only the pool, we can do it under Chapter 30, but you're still dealing with a prevailing wage and those items on that, in that sense. And I'll leave it at that. If there's any other questions, we can answer that.
Thank you for this presentation. It was very exciting to see the 3 different design options that you came up with. I'm going to open it to the board. Do you have any questions? Glenn?
Yeah, I'll be very quick. Thanks, Tom and Gary. Just a really quick question. There's a lot to chew on here, but I won't dive into it all. This is, when it comes down to it, money is going to be a big, factor in what direction the town goes. So this is where my question is it possible to phase in some of these things? And so specifically with option 1, even if I prefer option 2, could option 1, let's say we really just want to get that swim lap pool in because it needs to be replaced, get it in knowing that we're going to do the other smaller, gravity pool later. Is that an option?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that would potentially save us money. Maybe it wouldn't save us money in the long run, but it would allow us to spread out the project over a longer period of time. And then the same goes with the bubble. Let's say we were really excited about that, but clearly it's adding X millions of dollars to the project. We could always put a bubble on later, or is the extra cost?
It wouldn't affect the pool. It would probably have a major effect on the bathhouse.
Okay.
Because a part of that, you'd have to do a major renovation to convert that to a year-round building.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Just a quick question. These, excuse me, the estimates that we have in here for the various pools, does that include renovations of the existing bathhouse, or it's just the pool and the equipment and the deck?
No, yeah, there's money involved that we made assumptions in terms of number of toilet fixtures that are needed, so
Yeah.
there is money in there for
And you looked
improvements.
in there and it needs to be completely gutted.
Yeah.
And, there's no sense having a beautiful new pool and having the old bathhouse, so that includes
Budgets to
that.
include that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I think there was compliance issues with both bathhouses for ADA compliance,
Yeah.
as well as the electrical
Correct.
compliance, communication compliance.
Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah, so I thank you for putting this together and for the document that goes with this, which goes into a lot more detail than you just took us through now. I like the option of the 2 pools, primarily because of the ability to keep one going if one goes down and keep some level of programming going. And while it's not that much more expensive to do that, the question that I have is, if I look at the option 1 versus 2, and look at the number of people, option 1, which is the 2 pools, does 372 people, if I'm reading this properly. Option 2, which is the 1 pool, is 516. So it's a much larger number of people, which tells me obviously the pool is much larger, okay? The question comes down to this: if we did the center pool but not the South Walpole pool, have we accounted for the population that's in the South Walpole pool in these numbers? It doesn't look like it.
Well, the existing pool, I mean, it's each pool is slightly larger than what you have in the existing at the center pool. The reason for the large on option 2 is just that I need more surface area to make enough program spaces, so it is a larger pool there. But that number you have too also includes your wading pool, because I was doing
Yep.
that. But so if you're in that same range, the existing pool is a bather load of 230. Option 1 is 266, and option 2 would be 384. So in terms of the actual bathers in the pool, again, I don't. That's
But
a fairly large pool.
Option 1 essentially matches current capacity of the center pool.
A little bit more, but that's about it.
A little
Yeah,
bit, but
a little bit more,
it's
yeah.
not worth talking about. It's
Right.
essentially the same.
Same size.
So I don't know what the corresponding numbers are for the South Walpole pool. And what I'm trying to get to is, if we have the center pool as the only option of a pool, do we need to account for the population that would have also been at the South pool in these numbers? And does that cause me to think option 2 is the better option because it supports a much larger number of people than the current center pool supports?
I mean, I thought the usage, I believe, on the south pool are very low to begin with. So this is a very small amount. So I think this is still a fairly large pool for the population that you have here. And yeah, obviously, I mean, these pools too, we just set a certain size, so we could play with this and also say that pool could have a slightly larger footprint. I was trying to deal with trying to keep it geometrically the same, but we could always increase the size of the U-shaped pool if we wanted to get a few more people in, depending what the demand is. But you also, you have a large, the wading pool that you have now with the spray deck, that's actually a lot of population that, that covers a lot of people.
It is, but if I look at it from a capacity point of view, option 1 is 266. Option 2 is 384. This is quite a difference. And that's just in the swimming pool. It's not the wading pool. And so in my head, I'm trying to trade off, I like the 2 pools because I like having the resiliency effect of one goes down, I can keep the other one going. Or when we're running a meet, I can have people, taking swimming lessons over here. That makes a whole lot of sense to me. But then when I look at the numbers, I think to myself, the bigger pool might actually make more sense, even though it's just a single pool and a single filtration system. And part of what's leading me to that is the south pool.
So I think that definitely falls into the pros and cons here, right? And because we're dealing with a limited site, right? Like we only have a certain footprint to work with. So when you have to have that additional decking between the 2 pools, that just eats up a certain amount of real estate that you then can't really make up because Stone Street is there, right? So if we were to go what would be bottom right on this image, we can't push much further in that direction because there's a stream. To go towards the top, we already have the existing splash pad and wading pool with the parking area. And that's what really ends up squeezing you there, right? Like the smaller U-shaped pool, that may be able to be slightly larger, but we're working within that footprint of, wetlands to the north, stream to the east, Stone Street to the south, and existing, facilities to remain to the west. So again, that is one of the pros of the single pool is you can get more bathers in, right? And where the priority is there is definitely something to be considered.
Yeah, and I struggle with that priority because I'm not sure. I like the 2 pools, the 2 filtration systems, all those things I said, but I also like the bigger pool, especially if we lose the south pool.
And with growing populations over time.
Exactly.
It gives you room to expand as time.
Exactly
goes on.
right, yep.
And similarly, I like the pool option, not that I really have vested interest in it from that standpoint of which one the town would pursue. But I agree that, purely from a population standpoint, that there is an advantage to the single pool option.
Okay, thank you.
So if I could just add, I've been texting with Brendan and Patrick, our former director on that. So this past year, we've been limited to around 80 bathers in the pool at a time. In a good year, we're close to accommodate about a 160. It's more a matter of lifeguards and the amount of lifeguards per bather. So I wouldn't get as caught up in the 266 versus the 384 number. I'm sure we could work through that as we design it. Maybe if we take it down that road, pursue the 266 and see what we could, is there space to maximize that a little bit more?
Okay, that's helpful, Jim. I'm looking at just the overall capacity and thinking about future growth and so forth. So, and especially if we don't have the South Walpole pool. So, but if you're telling me that we don't really approach the capacity today, which we don't, it sounds like
Yeah,
then
it's
I'm
80 right now.
I'm much less concerned about it then. Okay, thank you.
If I could just clarify, the loads that I give you are calculated loads based on the code.
Gotcha.
Seldom do the pools reach those capacities. That's basically, every 15 feet, there's one person, so you have a bunch of people standing here. You never reach those capacities. And again, it's based on, the lifeguards. So a lot of pools will limit the number of patrons who can actually enter the complex based on the availability of guards.
Which is what we did this year.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would just say thanks for the study. I especially like this was a good presentation, but I really like digging into the details, looking at the parking as well. And you've given us a lot to think about along Jim's lines. Which do we prefer? Do we want to tweak the size if we go with the 2 pools? So I think he gave us what we need to really start thinking about it and figure out how to move forward, at some point. So thank you.
Ally, I had one more question. Yeah, I apologize. I missed one question that I had here, guys. In option 3, which has the enclosure, you had mentioned, and it practically it makes sense that there would be costs associated with putting it up, putting it down, energy costs for keeping it filled, storage costs, all those different things. I didn't see in your report that you had made an estimate of that, or maybe I missed it. But do you have like a ballpark of
On the operation, and now,
operational
I
costs?
think these were really looking at just the capital costs up front. We really don't look at operationally.
Yeah.
Because also too, when you, a pool like that, if you have it in the winter, you're gonna have full-time, you have lifeguards year-round. Right now, you staff up with mostly probably high school kids and college kids.
Yeah.
You need full-time, it's a full-time staff.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Ally.
Thank you. These are great concepts, and as Glenn spoke to, even the idea of kind of building on. And I think that's part as we go through the design process of, is a bubble sometime in the future of what type of buildings that you would have to build. But certainly the cost is significant, but having access to a pool year-round would be nice too. But there's some great options here and a lot for us to look through and consider.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are going to move things around a little bit. Peter, if we're just going to have the firefighters come up real quick first because we have quite a number of members from our fire department here. So, Chief Barry, did I see him? Yeah, there he is. Would you come on up and introduce the applicants we have for this evening?
Good evening. I have 4 candidates just present before you. Would you like to do each one individually?
Yep, that's fine. And if they afterwards, they can all each come up and introduce themselves.
Sure. First, I'd like to present Luke Cunningham. Luke is a paramedic student, anticipated graduate from the paramedic program this fall. He's currently working as an EMT in a busy 911 system, and he, along with all the others, comes highly recommended from his reference sources. Want them all to come up now or after?
Luke, do you want to come? You can come up real quick. That's fine.
How you doing?
Good evening.
I'd just like to say thank you to everyone in front of me and Chief Barry for my consideration of this position. To elaborate a little bit on what Chief Barry already said, I grew up in nearby Franklin, Massachusetts. I'm currently a paramedic student, and I work for a private ambulance company in the Framingham EMS system. During my time there, I've gotten to get some good practical experience. I'm currently wrapping up my time in paramedic school, and been working towards that. But yeah, thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Luke?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to present Alex Leary. He's a graduate of the Norfolk County Agricultural High School. He has experience working as an EMT and on an ambulance as well as an urgent care facility. He's a paramedic student also, and he's awaiting his test date to test for his paramedic certification. He is also highly recommended by his reference sources.
Good evening, Alex.
How you guys doing? So thank you for considering me tonight for the fire department. So I went to school Norfolk Aggie, basically right down the street, so I'm a little bit familiar with the town. Currently working at South Shore Health Express Urgent Care, and shortly I'll be joining. I got some EMS experience through Brewster. I'm going to be joining another company as well to get some more experience, hopefully before I get on board here. And I thank you for your consideration tonight.
All right, thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Next this evening, I have Jennifer Plunkett. She's currently a firefighter paramedic working for West Boylston. She's a sergeant in the Army National Guard, and she's also highly recommended by her references. Jennifer.
Good evening. I just want to thank everybody very much for your consideration as well and for the opportunity to be here in front of you. And again, I full-time firefighter paramedic for the last 3 years. I was doing basic for about 12 years prior to that, so I do have experience going in, and I have a lot more hard work and dedication to offer to the town, being a positive role model and doing the best that I can to make sure that everybody stays safe. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Jennifer?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Finally, I have Daniel Walsh. He's also a paramedic student, currently working as an EMT basic for a busy 911 system as well. And he's also working at the Beth Israel Needham Emergency Department, gaining invaluable experience there. Highly recommended as well.
Thank you all for having me here today. My name is Daniel Walsh. I come with experience from Beth Israel Deaconess Needham, working in the emergency room for over 2 years now. It's a transport destination for Walpole Fire. I've been able to see their work and the professionalism with the way they carry themselves. I've been very impressed. I also come with experience working from Plymouth's 911 system, working out the fire stations out of there. I've been able to gain familiarity with the day-to-day operations of a fire department, and I'm very excited to work here for the town of Walpole.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Barry, for bringing all of these candidates forward this evening. If there's no other questions, I'll have Ben make a motion.
I would make a motion to appoint candidates Luke Cunningham, Alex Leary, Jennifer Plunkett, and Daniel Walsh to the position of firefighter paramedic with the Walpole Fire Department.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have a vote, 5-0-0. Congratulations and welcome to Walpole. And thank you, everyone, for being here. We love a full room, but feel free to exit if you do not need to stay for the rest of the meeting. And congratulations to you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. All right.
Thanks, Chief.
I had a feeling that there's a lot of fire.
That was nice that it was skipped. Nobody wanted to hear about the Pine Street exclusion. I'm pretty sure if I had to guess.
All right, next on the agenda for this evening is a discussion and possible vote on the heavy commercial vehicle exclusion for Pine Street. Tonight we have Peter O'Kane from the Town of Sharon, town engineer, as well as the consultant that also worked on this project.
Sorry, I can hardly hear you.
Oh, it takes a minute.
Looks like I cleared the room. My name's Peter O'Kane. I'm the town engineer in Sharon, and I'm here to discuss a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion for Pine Street and Walpole. Are we ready?
Go for it. Yeah.
Mass General Law requires that a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion study be performed, and when in other words, a truck exclusion for a roadway, when that's required, the approval of both towns is required. The town of Sharon has already voted to approve this heavy vehicle exclusion for all the roadways in Sharon, which most of this redirection involves. I have a map that I can bring up. And we require the approval of the town of Walpole so that we can submit to MassDOT for final approval. Over the past 18 months, we've put together this plan. This is a summary of the plan. This isn't the entire plan. And it was distributed amongst the staff for the town of Walpole and Sharon. Public safety was involved. We got a lot of good feedback from Carl, the town engineer in Walpole, and the police and fire department made some great comments that we incorporated into the plan. There's a whole signage plan that goes along with this that I won't get into tonight. I think it's been reviewed, and Mass DOT has actually reviewed it and preliminarily has provided an approval to move forward with it. So I'm just here tonight to ask for your approval for us to move forward, and that you submit a letter that we can put in the package to give to Mass DOT to move forward with this truck exclusion. I should note that the first photo I brought up, which is the cover of this report, is an actual photo from South Walpole Street and shows what the residents on that street are dealing with, both as pedestrians and motorists. Because of the nature of the roadway, it is a scenic roadway in Sharon, and the right-of-way is extremely narrow. There's part of the roadways in Walpole that are actually 14 feet in width, which is way under the minimum requirement for even a local road, let alone a collector roadway. Because of the advent of GPS, a lot of traffic is redirected off of the highway onto this roadway now. And that's something that we need to redirect and bring to a road that's appropriate for heavy vehicle traffic. So that's what we're here to do. And with your help, we can do that and submit to the Mass DOT for approval. If you have any questions, please let me know, or if anybody in the audience has comments or questions. I know I get a lot of emails in support of this move, and over the years, we've gotten petitions from both residents, I think everybody on the street, but Walpole and Sharon both gave me petitions that I forwarded to the town of Walpole at one point during the process. It's been 18 months of this that we've been working through. The state does not make the exclusion of trucks a simple process for a good reason. You don't want to close every street in a town down to truck traffic, so they make it a detailed process, and we've gotten that done, I think.
No, thank you. It was a very thorough report. It's not a road I drive down often, but reading through the report and the different widths, it's amazing that trucks even make it down that road.
Well, they barely
it seems like
do.
it's quite treacherous.
I've been on the road when trucks delivering modular homes were caught under trees. They've gone off the road, and it's a pretty narrow road to try to get a truck with a house on the back of it out of there once it's gone off the street. We've had, I don't know if it got forwarded to Walpole, but we had a woman that emailed us and said she couldn't make it tonight, but she got in a severe accident on the roadway with a truck. So it's something we take really seriously, and I'm happy to move this project forward on behalf of the town of Sharon.
And I certainly think you have the select board's support on this.
Great.
We all received their report. Does anyone have any specific questions for this?
I
Jim?
just have a comment. First of all, I'm surprised that any truck actually drives these routes.
I think the GPS brings them there, and then they realize, oh no, I can't turn around, I have to go through here, and...
I mean, I went and drove it just to see what it was like. To be honest with you, I encountered a truck very much like your picture on South Walpole Street. It's probably in that same spot. And as you come down through, the Walpole Street side, the road is much larger. There's not as many curves and twists and turns and so forth. It's just much easier to navigate.
Right.
So I would find it hard to believe that even any of the truck people would have a problem with this. So I'm completely supportive, and it just makes total sense.
That's great, thank you.
Ben?
I'd make one comment. Yeah, I would support this as well. I appreciate all the work that went into it, on your behalf with the town of Sharon, and then also with our own staff. I know I've put a lot of time into it. I'd have to good-naturedly disagree with you on the fact that I wish it wasn't so hard to exclude trucks from certain areas, and I'm not sure why we allow them in certain areas, because it is dangerous and noisy and dirty and all sorts of other things. So it's a little sobering to see what this process entails and how difficult it is, but I appreciate you going through with it. Certainly support it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Jim, do you have any update?
No, just that it was great working with Sharon. Carl did a great job, and everyone's counterpart in Sharon. It's good to work with you guys, so thank you.
It was great working with you too, and the staff in Walpole. Everybody's been really helpful and provided really good comments on the project.
If we ever need anything, just remember how easy we were to work with.
All right, then, Ben, do we have a motion?
Sure. I would make a motion to approve a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion for Pine Street and support the plan voted on August 1st of this year by the Sharon Select Board for the alternative traffic route.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
You have a vote, 500.
Thank you very
for your
much.
patience this evening.
Nice to meet all of you. Have a good night.
We are just slightly past the time of our post time for 8:15 for open forum. Is there anyone here to speak on the open forum? Mr. Hamilton, please come forward.
Bill Hamilton, Precinct 5. I was at the ZBA meeting last night, and I don't believe we know why the Summer Street 40B has been redesigned. I believe the real reason is it is too wet. I believe the new construction design will have a terrible effect on our drinking water. I am worried that the new investors, the teachers' retirement pension fund, will suffer a major loss. I hope the Select Board will support the ZBA denying the changes. Make the HAC approve the project. The chairman of the ZBA told the members that if they deny these changes, the HAC will remand it back. If the HAC wants it approved, they should be responsible for approving it. If it causes injury to Walpole, they should be responsible and liable for it. So it should be the HBA, the HAC, that approves this project, not our volunteers on the ZBA being forced to approve it. This happened on the previous approval. The same thing was said by town council to the members. If you don't approve it, it'll be mandated back. I hope some select board members can be at the September 6th meeting to support the volunteers that you appoint to the ZBA and give them the backing they need if they wish to deny this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Is anyone else here to speak on open forum this evening? All right, then we will move forward with new business for this evening. The next part is the vote to close the fall 2023 town meeting warrant. Jim, do we have an update?
Sure, I was actually going to cover that in my updates, but I'll just get to it now. So the warrant's closed, if the board votes to close it. Right now, we have just about 21 articles. Council has reviewed some of those articles already. There's 2 citizens petitions on there. So if the board votes to close it tonight, we will forward it off in entirety to town council. I expect that it'll be back before your board on September 12th for you to sign, so we can, you know, the fall is a very tight time frame and window that we have. So we'll have it back at your next meeting for you to sign. That's it.
Any questions or comment from the board? All right. Ben, do we have a motion?
I'd make a motion to close the fall 2023 town meeting warrant.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is a vote, 5-0-0. The next item on the list is a request of the Recreation Department to hold the first annual Halloween event on October 28th, 2023. Is Brendan here to speak?
He was here, but I can just speak to this briefly. This is an attempt for Brendan to combine basically 2 events into one. It's the Fall Fest and the Halloween parade for the kids to make it kind of more enticing for everyone to come down early to the downtown and then stick around afterwards for some events that they're going to be having there. I'm sure we'll have lots of bouncy houses, some vendors and everything, and he and the Recreation Committee and their Assistant Director, Lauren, have been working hard on putting this together, so I'm glad they were doing this.
It's the description of it seems like it will be a fun event, and let's hope for good weather.
You bet.
Anyone else have any comments for this? All right, Ben.
I would make a motion to approve the request for the Recreation Department to hold their first annual Halloween event on October 28th, 2023, beginning at 10 a.m. in the Stonefield area.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have a vote, 5-0-0. The next item for new business is a request of the Union Congregational Church for their annual event. Ben, do you want to do that motion as well?
I'd make a motion to approve the request of the Union Congregational Church to hold their annual Harvest Fair on September 23rd, 2023, and close Rhodes Avenue from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. with access for residents and public safety.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have a vote, 500. And then we will move on to consent agenda.
I'd make a motion to approve the consent items as listed on the August 22nd agenda.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And you have a vote, 500. I just want to acknowledge that numerous donations were made in honor of James Taylor to the COA Gifts, and as well as in honor to Susan McGuire to the ambulance gift account. So thank you for your donations. And then we can move on to minutes.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes of July 18th as presented in our packet.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have a vote, 500. And Jim, anything else to add for our town administrator update?
Just 2 or 3 things. Capital budget started meeting tonight. I thank Patrick and Ed Forsberg and the whole committee for their hard work. FinCom's going to start their deliberations next week. And just to follow up to your MBTA communities discussion, the last meeting, Patrick Duchesne is set to meet with the planning board in September, I believe it's September 21st, to review the requirements and provide a similar presentation that was given to you last meeting. And he and I are going to work together to come up with some type of an insert for fall town meeting members in their packet so they know this is upcoming, not this town meeting, but after this town meeting, we only really have 2 town meetings to consider this. We want to start to educate them now, and then we can do our public outreach sessions, likely in the winter and spring. So just heads up with that. Okay, that's all.
I just have one quick question about the town warrant. Do we have the calendar set, or are we still kind of working on the finance committee, planning board?
So the planning board, they've already had their public hearings with the exception of one item. I think it was the...
Well, they continued one of the citizens petitions. They took action on the other one, and then the ADU and the citizen petition that was continued
September
would be on
21st.
September 21st.
So that's set, and we're pretty much set with when we're going to the printer and everything. And I don't have it in front of me, but it's in the packet that's going to FinCom, which your board is CC'd on. So
Okay.
it's pretty much set.
All right, very good. Does anyone else have anything, questions or comments to make? All right, then.
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.